Hey, what's going on YouTube? Valsa here, and once again we're talking Warpets. So we got the new Archer heroes coming out, Falgrim and Sibyl, and I've gotten a bunch of messages asking me, hey, what pet should I put with them? How should I build the pet, etc. Well, the answer is it's all really speculative right now. You know, there's been some testing with Falgrim and Sibyl on the test servers and the early G1 servers, but nowhere enough real PvP to have any sort of definitive answer what pet we should put with the new heroes. More importantly, we don't have their dedicated pet yet, right? Now, is it a 100% chance we eventually do get a dedicated pet for these two? I mean, I guess it's less than 100%. These are the first G4 heroes. You know, they could change up how they do things. But with pretty high confidence, I think they're eventually going to release a pet for these two. And I think it'll probably be the strongest pet for them, all right? Now, when are they going to release them? Who knows? Could be next week, but it could easily be 3 to 4 months from now. Could be even longer. There's a very good chance you're going to have to do some real work with these new heroes before you get the new pet, before you get a chance to build out the new pet. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, that's really the focus of this video. Now, of course, we don't know what the new pet is going to look like, but some of the tricks we'll be discussing in this video, some of the tips, they'll almost certainly be relevant to whatever the new pet is. All right, so let's start the discussion that you're going to pair Falgrim and Sibyl together. This video isn't about the new archers per se, but it's about what pet to use with them. But we need to baseline what the new archers are trying to do to understand how we want the pet to work with that. Now, unlike our last couple of archer pairs, Falgrim and Sibyl really care a lot about skill damage of the rage cycle. But their main twist seems to be debuffs and debuff synergy. Falgrim's fourth skill, Contract Killer, gives a 6% normal damage buff and a 20% skill damage buff every time you inflict a debuff via a hero skill. And this can stack up to 3 times, and it lasts for 10 seconds. 10 seconds is a long time, so if you build this right, you should ramp up pretty quickly to an 18% normal attack buff and a 60% skill damage buff just from the skill alone. Now, Falgrim himself gives 1 debuff with his hero skill, Sibyl gives 2. If you don't use Sibyl, I think Awaken Kanara is an awesome chance because she gives 3 skill-related debuffs, so I think she's the obvious choice if you don't pair the new archers together. All right. So the new archers care a lot about skill damage, they care about debuffing, and they're archers, so they care about normal attacks. Let's look at our existing choice of pets to see what the best option is. I think we can rule out the Night Rock right away. The Night Rock's talent triggers when your normal attacks crit, right? You might ask, hey, what's the base chance for a normal attack to crit? The base chance is 0, right? You need something to boost your normal attacks or the Night Rock is never going to trigger, right? So where'd you get normal attack crit? Well, the skill itself does give you a small percentage, but it's a pretty trivial amount. You can also pick up some other talents that would also give you a small amount, but again, even with these, it's pretty small. You can get some additional normal attack crit from the precision tree, but neither Falgrim or Sibyl have the precision tree, and none of their talent skills give normal crit rate either. Right? So who does give normal crit? Well, Fregar's rage skill gives a ton. Zeta and Hask give some as well, and Sindrian gives a little bit. So the Night Rock's really great with a Sindrian Fregar march. It's okay with marchers featuring Zeta or Hask, but it's just terrible with the new archers. Well, what about the Snowpeak Rock? The Snowpeak's talent gives you a 30% chance whenever you inflict a defense break of doing damage to the target legion. You can get that 30% chance up using the Amber skill, right? So do Falgrim and Sibyl give defense break? Yeah, they do. Sibyl's fourth skill, when it's max, gives a 10% defense break for 15 seconds, all right? And triggers when you reach 500 rage. So once every rage cycle, and once you activate it, you should maintain it for the entire battle, right? So it's once a rage cycle, so figure, I don't know, every 9 or 10 seconds, just as a rule of thumb. Okay, so we have a defense break, but it's only once every 9 or 10 seconds. That's not amazing. Are there any other ways to get a defense break with these two? All right. Well, if you put Falgrim in the lead and you go all the way up to the top of the PvP tree, you can get Breach Blade, which gives you a 10% defense break for 5 seconds, but only once every 30 seconds. All right. The good thing about that is as soon as you start combat, assuming you haven't been in combat, for the prior 30 seconds, Fulgrim's going to inflict the Breach Blade. It'll last 5 seconds, about which time you should probably be at or near 500 rage. You'll get the Sibyl Breach, and then you should keep that up for basically the rest of combat, right? So that's a great way for getting defense break rolling. It's not really a great way for triggering the Snowpeak, however, right? You also have to full commit to the PvP tree, which, I mean, I guess we'll see how the builds roll out. but I don't think I'm going to put Falgrim in the lead with a full PvP tree, at least to start. Okay, so what if Sibyl's the lead? Well, Sibyl's got the control tree, and in the control tree you have the ambush skill, which when you max it out gives you a 10% chance every normal attack to inflict a 5% defense break for 5 seconds. It's a low chance, but it's 10% per normal attack, so you're at least getting one swing around at that and maybe more. Now you might say this is only a 5% defense break, and I know that once I max this fourth skill out, I'm going to have a 10% defense break on the target, pretty much all the time. So is the 5% even going to do anything? Is it going to help my Snow Peak? And it will, and here's how this works. Debuffs take effect the turn after you trigger them, but the triggered effects from debuffs take place the same turn. That's probably confusing. Let me give you an example to show you how this is going to work. All right, let's say it's combat turn 7. You're fighting with your Sibyl March. You're targeting, a Lily Valen March. You've already put the explosive potential debuff on them, so they have a 10% defense break on them right now. It's going to last another, 10 seconds or whatever. All right, you make another normal attack, and you win the roll for your ambush, but your ambush is only a 5% defense break when you already have a 10% defense break on there. What's going to happen? Well, on turn 7, because you triggered a debuff effect, anything contingent on that will kick in. For example, your Snow Peak rock will on turn 7 make its concentration roll. Remember, that's a base 30% chance. And if it wins that roll, it's going to inflict damage on the Lily Valen on turn 7. Any other effects triggered by debuffs will kick in now as well. But the debuff itself doesn't kick in until the following turn. All right, now it's turn 8. The game looks at the Lily Valen March. It sees there's a 5% defense break pending from the ambush, but it also sees that there's already a 10% debuff on it from explosive potential. It goes, hey, the 10% stronger than the 5%, so the 5% is ineffective and it goes away. All right, so you don't get that 5% defense break. It doesn't stack. It doesn't overwrite the 10%, but you got all the triggers from it, so it's still going to help your Snow Peak rock. All right, so it works. How good is it really? It's okay. All right, you get the one proc every 9 or 10 seconds. Then you get the 10% chance every normal attack. That's okay. It's not amazing. I don't really see any way to abuse the defense break the way you can with, say, like a Kanara and Nico build, which just has a ton more synergies and is better for the Snow Peak rock. Hey, what about a Shadow Manticore? Well, the base skill here works. You'll do some damage and do a bit of healing every rage cycle, once a rage cycle. Like, healing's never bad, but there's no synergy with Sibyl Falgrim the way there is with a Magzay March. This pet also leans pretty heavily on the Amber skill, which on a Magzay March is phenomenal, but on Sibyl Falgrim doesn't work at all, right? Now, the damage factor between the two, assuming you have the same star levels and the same attribute levels, the damage factor is literally identical. The upside to the Shadow is that it's got a 100% chance to hit once every rage cycle, and obviously the little bit of healing. The upside on a Snow Peak is that if you've built your March correctly, you have chances to hit multiple times per rage cycle, as well as the Snow Peak gives you a little physical attack boost to your March. Physical attack is probably more on plan for what Sibyl and Falgrim are trying to do than a bit of healing, so that's the reason I would lean slightly towards the Snow Peak, but I think these pets are pretty equivalent, and there's not a big gap between the two. Okay, so we know that the Snow Peak cares specifically about defense break, but we know that Sibyl and Falgrim do a bunch of debuffs. Are there any pets that care about debuffs in general? Well, yeah, there's one, the Berserk Phaedrake. Now, the Berserk favors the Cowardice debuff, which only Ferondil triggers, but it gets some benefits from all debuffs. Is it a good match for Sibyl and Falgrim? Well, sadly, no. You'll notice the attack range on the Berserk is near. What is near attack range? It's not melee range, it's Elk Rider range, all right? If you look at all the Cav heroes, you'll notice that their attack range is always set to near. This is to enable Elf ground Cav players to actually utilize those troops. What's Archer range? Archer range is medium. If you put a Berserk on an Archer March and it attacks from full Archer range, the Berserk's not going to trigger, it's not going to charge up, it's not going to do anything, basically, right? Now, if you move your Archer range into melee range, it'll work, but obviously that's not the plan for Archers. Alright, so the Berserk's out. What does that leave us? Just the good old trusty Sand Lizard. Sand lizards are pretty straightforward, they work, but there's no specific healing synergy or anything like that with a Sibyl and Falgrim March. My strongest piece of advice is just don't break yourself building this pet. Until you receive new information that these heroes won't be getting a dedicated pet, and we're probably not getting that information, you should treat any pet for them as a temporary measure and only put light investment into it. Right now, if you remember, when Mag Zay came out, it was kind of a similar situation. Their dedicated pet didn't come out until several months later. And with Mag Zay, most players either put together a sand lizard for them or they went with a night rock. And then finally, when the Shadow Manticore got released, a lot of those pets that people had built for Mag Zay, they got benched, and we went and built out a Shadow Manticore. If you're one of those players, specifically if you have a sand lizard that you benched, you can probably repurpose it, that sand lizard, for Sibyl and Falgrim for the time being, right? And if you've got a strong Snow Peak or a strong Shadow Manticore, I think that's fine too. I just think most players with one of those strong pets will want to keep it with their Kanara March or their Mag Zay March, because it's just going to do better there. So how did I build out my pet? Well, first of all, I went for an economy build because, as I've said a couple times already, I think this is going to be a very temporary pet, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time or resources on it. The heroes are really skill damage focused, so I decided I was going to build out the pet to really enhance that. I picked up all the skill damage enhancers like Pursuit, Predation, Beast Mark, and Track and Hunt, all of which increase either the crit rate or the crit damage of hero skills. I'm also probably going to go on the skill tree with Falgrim to lead this march, at least at the start. In addition, I picked up Outbursts of Rage, particularly with such a high agility score. I thought it might be interesting to really ramp up that rage cycle to see how fast I get it going. For an Archer March, there's not a ton of synergies with Chain Strike, but Chain Strike's just so good. I couldn't not include it here. I think it's still going to help a lot. I think there's a decent case actually for Intense Chain Strike on this pet. But Intense Chain Strike's an agility skill. I've already got 3 agility skills, and I really wanted to focus on the hero's skill damage first. Right, the other skills on here are just the generic healing stuff, right? Great Care to give me a second healing source, and then Divine Blessing to boost both the talent skill as well as Great Care. Nothing amazing, but they're very inexpensive. The other skill that I really thought about was Interruption. Interruption decreases the chance that your opponent's pet will cast its pet skill. And the reason I strongly considered here is that Interruption is the only generic pet talent that puts a debuff on the enemy march. Now, sadly, as it turns out, Fulgrim's Force skill only works with hero skill debuffs, and the pet skill Interruption doesn't count towards that. But there are several talents, particularly with Sibyl, that are triggered by debuff effects. Her base foundation talent, for example, is Backstabber, which gives a 2% damage buff for 5 seconds every time your march inflicts a debuff on the enemy march. Now that's it's 100% chance for a debuff. It lasts 5 seconds and it doesn't stack. It goes off any time you put a debuff on. So you're probably going to have near perfect uptime on that anyway. The other one you can go, though, if you go down the control tree with Sibyl, you can pick up the talent Sage, which gives you a 5% hero skill damage boost that lasts for 10 seconds, but it's only a 50-50 chance. So I think that's a really nice talent, and if you do grab Sage, it's probably worth at least considering the Interruption on your pet, just to give yourself an additional roll to get additional uptime on the talent, right? Now I said, like I said, I'm going to go the skill tree first, so I didn't pick up Interruption here. But if I go the control tree and pick it up, I'll at least think about it. But the most important thing here is I'm not really investing much more into this pet. Like I said, I expect we'll get something dedicated to these heroes in the next couple months, and I'll probably go all in on that. Hey, that's it, and thank you to everyone for stopping by. If you enjoyed this content or found it helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button. Remember, you can send me your war pets if you'd like me to take a look or review them, and I will be featuring the strongest war pets in the game right here on this channel. Look for more details in the description below, and until next time, stay classy, Belleron.